I am Grace, and I am a mother, a wife, and above all, a servant of God. Today, I am sitting here with my hands trembling, not because I am weak, but because the memories I carry are heavy. My life has been a journey of pain, mistakes, loss, and redemption, and I feel compelled to share it, not for pity, but so that someone, somewhere, might see God's hand even in the darkest of nights. I was born in a small town, the youngest of 5 children. My childhood was not easy, though I did not realize it at first. My father was a strict man, a man who believed that love was shown through discipline rather than words. My mother, gentle and soft-spoken, tried to protect us, but she too was weighed down by the burden of poverty and fear. I remember nights when I would cry silently under my thin blanket, praying to God that life would be kinder. Even then, I knew of God, but he felt distant, like a candle flickering at the far end of a dark room. By the time I was a teenager, I had learned to hide my tears, to put on a brave face, and to survive. I was not the perfect daughter. I made mistakes, small ones at first, then bigger. I fell in love for the first time when I was 16, a young boy from school who seemed kind and attentive. I thought I was experiencing love, but it was only infatuation. That relationship ended painfully, leaving me with a broken heart and a quiet resentment toward the world. I promised myself I would never fall again, yet life has a way of humbling you. At 19, I met the man who would become my husband. He was charming, attentive, and seemed like everything I had ever dreamed of. We married when I was 20, and I thought my life had finally begun. The first years were sweet, laughter, shared dreams, and hope. Then came our first child, a beautiful baby boy. I held him in my arms and promised God I would raise him in faith. But motherhood brought trials I had not anticipated. My husband, once loving, became distant. Arguments erupted over money, decisions, and small misunderstandings. I tried to pray, tried to be patient, but anger and bitterness crept in. There were nights when I wept silently, questioning if I had made the right choice in marrying him. I felt alone, trapped in a marriage that sometimes felt like a cage. I also battled my own weaknesses. I struggled with jealousy when friends seemed to have perfect families, with envy when others had what I could not afford. Pride whispered to me to hide my tears, to act strong, even when I was breaking inside. I turned to God in desperation, and slowly, he began to show me that I could not carry this weight alone. I remember kneeling beside my bed one night, exhausted from crying, whispering, "Lord, if you are real, show me a way. If you see me, help me survive this." It was in those quiet moments that my faith began to awaken. God did not answer with fireworks or immediate miracles. He began with small things, a kind word from a neighbor, a moment of laughter with my son, a sudden peace in my heart when I felt like screaming. I began reading the Bible, starting with Psalms. I would cry as I read, feeling as though the words were written for me alone. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." Those words became my anchor. Motherhood itself became a form of ministry for me. I poured all my love and patience into my children, learning to forgive through their innocence, learning to pray through their needs. I began attending church regularly, not out of obligation, but out of desperation for guidance. Slowly, I saw the change in myself. I was calmer, gentler, more patient. Even my marriage, though still imperfect, began to shift as I practiced grace instead of bitterness. But life was not done testing me. A few years later, I faced a trial that shook me to my core. My husband lost his job, and we were forced to move back to my parents' small home. Pride and fear whispered that I had failed, but I remembered my prayers, and I clung to God. Those months were hard. We went without, but we survived. I learned the meaning of humility, of patience, and the power of faith when all else seems lost. Now, as I sit here telling my story, my children grown, and my marriage stronger through forgiveness and prayer, I see God's hand everywhere. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of fear and despair has shaped me into the woman I am today. I am not perfect. I stumble, I cry, I still doubt sometimes. But I have learned that my weaknesses are the canvas for God's strength. If anyone reads this, know that life will not spare you pain, mistakes, or loss. But in the middle of the storm, you can find Him. You can find peace. You can find love. I have found it slowly, painfully, beautifully, and it is worth every tear I have shed. I am Grace, a mother, a wife, a Christian. I confess my struggles, my fears, and my weaknesses, and I testify that God's grace is enough. The years that followed my early motherhood were not easy, though I had begun to taste the sweetness of God's presence. Life seemed to test me at every turn. My husband, who had once been my pillar, struggled with his own demons, pride, anger, and sometimes hopelessness. There were moments I questioned my own faith. How could God allow so much pain in the life of someone trying to follow Him? One of the hardest trials came when my youngest daughter was born. She was beautiful, delicate, and full of life, but her birth was complicated. I nearly died from complications, and for weeks, I lay in the hospital, tethered to machines, my body weak, my spirit fragile. I prayed like never before, whispering through tears, "Lord, if I live, I will serve you fully. I will honor you in every step." I survived, though the recovery was slow and painful. My husband, too, changed during this time. The fear of losing me seemed to awaken something in him. Slowly, we began to rebuild not only our marriage but the foundation of our family. I learned that faith is not only about praying in peace, but clinging to God in the storms. Yet life's trials were not only physical. I faced emotional and spiritual battles that nearly broke me. There were friends I trusted who betrayed me, whispers of judgment from people who thought they knew my heart, and moments when I felt completely isolated. I remember one evening, sitting alone in the kitchen, my youngest asleep upstairs, tears running down my face, and asking God in desperation, "Why am I here? Why must I fight alone?" And God answered, not with an immediate resolution, but with a quiet, unshakable peace that settled in my heart. I realized that true faith is not the absence of pain, but the courage to continue when everything seems lost. That night, I made a vow to myself and to Him. I would never let bitterness take root in my heart. I would forgive, even when it was hard. I would love, even when it was undeserved. Motherhood, I discovered, is a crucible of character. I learned patience I did not know I had, empathy I never expected to feel, and strength I did not know was inside me. I cried over scraped knees, over heartbreaks, over the countless mistakes my children made, and yet I found joy in teaching them, guiding them, and witnessing their small victories. Each success, each smile, each hug became a reminder that life, though hard, is beautiful. During these years, I also faced moments of temptation and doubt. Pride, fear, and sometimes despair would try to pull me away from God. I would find myself thinking, am I doing enough? Am I truly serving Him? But every time, I would return to prayer, to Scripture, to the quiet moments when God's voice seemed to whisper, "Grace, I see you. I am with you." One of the most humbling moments came when my eldest son, a boy I had loved fiercely, went astray. He made choices that broke my heart, choices I never thought he would make. I cried, I prayed, I begged God for guidance, and I also asked myself hard questions. Had I failed him? But I learned then that God's plan is not always ours to see. My role was to love him, to guide him, and to trust that God could reach the heart of my child even when I could not. Through it all, I found a purpose beyond my personal struggles, mentoring other mothers, sharing my testimony, and walking alongside women who felt lost and broken. I discovered that our pain is often a bridge to help others find hope. I started small, meeting with a few women in my neighborhood, sharing Bible verses, praying together, and slowly my little gatherings grew. Mothers came to me, tired, weary, and desperate for guidance. And I realized that every tear I had shed, every trial I had faced, equipped me to be a vessel of God's love for others. Now, looking back, I see a tapestry woven with sorrow, mistakes, lessons, and divine grace. The woman I am today is not the woman I was at 19, crying over a broken heart. She is not the woman who felt abandoned in a hospital bed, terrified for her life. She is a woman who has seen darkness, walked through fire, and emerged stronger, not by her own strength, but by clinging to God through every storm. If I were to give advice to any mother, any woman, any human being struggling under life's weight, I would say this: your pain is not wasted. Your tears are not unseen. God's hand is at work even when the path seems unclear. Trust him, cling to him, and never stop loving yourself, your family, and those around you. I am Grace. I am a mother, a Christian, a survivor, and above all, a witness to the transformative power of faith. My story is not perfect. It is messy, painful, and raw, but it is mine, and it is a testimony of God's enduring love and mercy. The years continued to roll on, and I began to notice a change within myself. I was no longer the young woman who trembled at life's challenges or questioned whether God truly cared. I had been molded, shaped, and refined through trials. I realized that every heartbreak, every sleepless night, every tear shed for my children had prepared me for a life of purpose. My eldest son, who once wandered into choices that filled me with grief, began to find his way back. It was not overnight, nor was it easy. There were arguments, silences, and moments when I doubted if I could ever reach him. But I kept praying, kept loving without judgment. One evening, he came to me with tears in his eyes, confessing the mistakes he had made, asking for forgiveness. In that moment, I felt a surge of emotion I cannot describe, a mixture of relief, pride, and deep, unshakable gratitude. God had restored what I thought was lost. Through my children, I also learned the delicate art of letting go. As a mother, we want to protect, to control, to shield our children from every pain. But life teaches us that their paths are theirs to walk. My role was to guide, to pray, to stand steadfast in love. And as I let go, I discovered peace in knowing that God was walking with them, even when I could not. Around this time, I also felt a stirring in my heart to serve beyond my family. The little gatherings I had started with other mothers in my community grew into a small fellowship, a space where women could share their struggles, their hopes, and their fears. I became a mentor, a confidant, a friend. I shared my own story openly, confessing my mistakes, my doubts, and my fears. And I saw God's power at work in the lives of others. Women who had felt hopeless began to smile again. Children who had been neglected found new support. Families were healed through prayer, counsel, and unwavering love. It was during these years that I truly understood the meaning of redemption. Not redemption in the sense of a sudden miracle that wipes away pain, but redemption through perseverance, through faith, and through the courage to rise every time we fall. My scars, both visible and invisible, became my testimony. I learned to wear them not as shame, but as symbols of survival, growth, and grace. I also came to understand forgiveness in its deepest sense. I forgave my husband for the years of distance and pride, not because he asked for it, but because I needed freedom. I forgave those who had betrayed me, knowing that holding on to anger would only weigh me down. And most importantly, I forgave myself for the times I doubted God, for the mistakes I made as a mother and a wife, for the moments I thought I was not enough. Spiritually, I blossomed in ways I had never imagined. My prayers became more than words. They became lifelines. I prayed with intention, with humility, with a deep awareness of God's presence. I learned to listen as much as I spoke, to trust as much as I sought. And slowly, my life became a reflection of the peace I had sought for so many years. Now, in my later years, I can sit quietly in my home and reflect on the journey I have walked. I see the children I have nurtured growing into responsible adults. I see marriages healed, families strengthened, and communities touched by the love of Christ through simple acts of service. And I realize that every tear, every trial, every night spent in fear and doubt was not wasted. To any mother reading this, or any person struggling with life's relentless trials, I say, your story is not over. Your pain is not in vain. God is writing a masterpiece through your life, even when you cannot see it. Trust Him, lean on Him, and never underestimate the power of love, prayer, and perseverance. I am Grace. I am a mother, a Christian, a woman who has stumbled, wept, and faltered. But above all, I am a witness to God's enduring faithfulness, His unwavering love, and His ability to transform the broken into vessels of hope. And as I close my eyes each night, I whisper a simple prayer, one that has carried me through decades of trials. Lord, thank you for the life you have given me. Thank you for my children, my family, my faith. Keep me humble, keep me strong, and use me to shine your light in this world.
Amen.
Because through every tear and trial, I have learned the greatest truth of all. God's love never fails, and a mother's faith, even in her darkest hour, can change lives, starting with her own. Now, as I sit in the quiet of my home, the sun setting gently over the horizon, I can see how far God has brought me. The house is calm, my children have grown, some with families of their own, and the laughter of grandchildren often fills the air. But it is in these quiet moments that I reflect most deeply on the trials I endured, the mistakes I made, and the lessons God used to shape my heart. I have learned that life does not always go according to our plans. There were days when I felt completely abandoned, when I doubted everything, my purpose, my abilities, even God's presence. But in those moments, I discovered that faith is not about ease or comfort. It is about holding on to God when everything seems lost, trusting Him even when we cannot see the way forward. Looking back, I see now that every hardship, every tear, every sleepless night was preparing me for the life I lead today. My journey was never meant to be simple. It was meant to teach me endurance, humility, and the beauty of grace. I was never just surviving. I was being molded, like clay in the hands of the master potter, shaped carefully to reflect His glory. One of the most beautiful lessons I have learned is that of legacy. What we do in our lives ripples far beyond our own understanding. I have seen women I mentored become pillars of faith in their communities. I have watched my children carry the lessons of love, faith, and resilience into their own families. I have witnessed forgiveness transform broken relationships and prayer turned despair into hope. There are moments, of course, when I still feel the weight of regret. Choices I wish I had made differently, words I wish I had spoken with more kindness, and moments I wish I could reclaim. But even these moments have become part of my story, reminders that God's grace covers imperfection, that mistakes can be transformed into wisdom, and that love can heal wounds that once seemed permanent. I am now more than a mother. I am a living testimony. Not because I have done everything perfectly, but because I have walked through fire and have been refined by it. I have experienced the depth of human pain, the sting of betrayal, the sorrow of disappointment, and yet I have also known God's unending love, the warmth of forgiveness, and the joy of redemption. If I could speak to every mother, every woman, every human being who feels weary and burdened by life, I would say this: do not give up. Do not allow pain to steal your faith. Do not let fear define your days. Cling to God, even in the smallest acts of trust, a prayer whispered in the dark, a moment of patience with a child, a hand extended to someone in need. These small acts, rooted in faith and love, create ripples that last far longer than we will ever know. I have learned that life is not about avoiding trials. It is about how we respond to them. It is about turning heartbreak into compassion, mistakes into wisdom, and suffering into empathy. And when we do this, when we surrender to God's guidance, we leave a legacy far greater than material wealth or public recognition, a legacy of faith, hope, and love. Today, I am at peace. I am proud of the woman I have become, not for what I have accomplished, but for how I have endured, loved, and grown. My children know love, my family knows faith, and my community knows that even in the midst of life's storms, God's light can shine through. I close my eyes each night with a heart full of gratitude, whispering the same prayer I have carried through decades of trials. Lord, thank you for every joy and every sorrow. Thank you for my children, my family, and my faith. May my life be a testament to your grace, and may I continue to shine your light in this world. Amen. And in the silence that follows, I feel it, a gentle reassurance that my life, with all its struggles and triumphs, has mattered. That my tears, prayers, and acts of love have not been in vain. That God, in His infinite wisdom, has used me to touch lives, heal hearts, and inspire faith. I am Grace. I am a mother, a Christian, a survivor, a mentor, and a witness to the transformative power of God's love. My story is my testimony, my life a confession, and my hope eternal, that no matter the trials, no matter the heartbreak, God's grace is always enough.